She said he was disruptive, but the truth caught on camera told a completely different story. It was a bright and bustling morning at the Austin Bergstrom International Airport. 11-year-old Sean could hardly contain his excitement. Today was the day he'd been dreaming about for months, his very first plane trip. He clutched his well-worn backpack tightly, a grin stretching across his face as he stood in line with his mother and older sister. Their destination? Los Angeles, where they'd visit his aunt and explore the sunny beaches Sean had only seen in pictures. Sean was full of questions, firing them at his mom non-stop. How high do planes go? Do we get to see the clouds? Do they feel soft up there? His mom chuckled, brushing an imaginary speck of dust off his neatly pressed blue polo shirt. You'll see soon enough, baby. It's all part of the adventure. At the security checkpoint, Sean's enthusiasm caught the attention of nearby travelers. An older couple standing behind them smiled warmly as he excitedly examined the conveyor belt where their belongings disappeared into the scanner. His innocent joy was contagious, earning him kind words and laughter from strangers. Once through security, the trio found themselves at their gate. Sean pressed his face against the massive airport window, mesmerized by the planes taxiing and taking off. "It's so big," he whispered, staring wide-eyed at the aircraft they'd soon be boarding. His sister nudged him playfully, teasing, "Don't worry, Sean. You'll get used to it after 100 flights." But Sean didn't want to get used to it. He wanted to savor every single moment. As the boarding announcement crackled over the speakers, Sean practically bounced with excitement. "Group B, that's us," his mum said with a smile. They lined up, and as the gate agent scanned their tickets, Sean proudly led the way down the jet bridge. Stepping onto the plane was like entering another world for Sean. He marveled at the rows of seats, the overhead bins, and the tiny windows. A flight attendant greeted them with a practiced smile as they shuffled down the aisle, searching for their seats. Sean spotted a window seat in their row and eagerly plopped down, pressing his nose against the glass. His mum chuckled, whispering, "Relax, we haven't even left yet." As passengers settled in, the atmosphere was calm, with the usual sounds of luggage being stowed and seatbelts clicking into place. Sean's excitement was infectious, even drawing the attention of a few passengers who smiled at his awe. But then it happened. A tall, blonde flight attendant with a tightly pulled bun appeared a few rows ahead. Her eyes scanned the cabin sharply, and for a fleeting moment, they landed on Sean. Something about her expression changed, but Sean, still focused on the view outside, didn't notice. But as everyone prepared for takeoff, an unexpected tension began to fill the air. Sean was too busy imagining what it would feel like to soar above the clouds to notice the air hostess approaching. Her name tag read Ms. Bradley, and her tone carried an air of authority that didn't match the warm professionalism of her colleagues. She stopped abruptly at Sean's row, her sharp gaze fixed on him. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clipped. "I need you to lower your voice and sit still. You're distracting other passengers." Sean blinked, confused. His mother, sitting beside him, frowned. "He wasn't being loud," she said, her voice calm but firm. "He's just excited. It's his first flight." Ms. Bradley's eyes narrowed. "Regardless, he needs to keep it down. We have other passengers to think about." The exchange drew the attention of nearby travelers who looked up from their phones and magazines. Sean's cheeks flushed as he glanced nervously at his mom. He hadn't been yelling or causing any trouble, just asking questions and marveling at the view. Sean's mum, a woman who had always carried herself with quiet dignity, straightened in her seat. "We understand," she said, her tone measured. "But I assure you, he hasn't done anything disruptive." Ms. Bradley didn't reply. She gave a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes and marched off down the aisle. Sean shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his excitement dimming as he whispered, "Did I do something wrong, Mom?" His mother squeezed his hand gently. "Not at all, baby. You're fine." But the mood in their row had changed. The joy Sean had been feeling was now mixed with unease. He tried to focus on the view outside the window, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. A few minutes later, Ms. Bradley returned. This time she had an air of finality about her. "Ma'am," she said, addressing Sean's mum directly, "I'm going to have to ask you and your son to leave the plane." Gasps rippled through the nearby rows. Sean's mother's eyes widened. "What? On what grounds?" Ms. Bradley folded her arms. "Your son is being disruptive and making other passengers uncomfortable. This is a safety issue." Sean's mother looked around, her voice rising slightly. "He's an 11-year-old child who hasn't done a thing wrong. Who exactly is uncomfortable?" No one spoke up. In fact, a man in the row behind them muttered, "This is ridiculous," under his breath. A woman across the aisle shook her head in disapproval. Ms. Bradley, unfazed, signaled to another flight attendant. "Please escort them off the aircraft," she said coldly. Her words felt like a slap, stinging not just Sean and his family, but also the passengers witnessing the scene. Sean's mum stood up, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "Come on, Sean, let's go." She glanced at her daughter, who had been silent, frozen in shock. "You too." As they gathered their belongings, Sean's eyes welled with tears. He couldn't understand why this was happening. He hadn't yelled, he hadn't broken any rules, and yet he was being treated like a problem. His mother held his hand tightly, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. As they walked down the aisle, heads turned and murmurs grew louder. Some passengers muttered words of support, while others pulled out their phones, discreetly recording the incident. Sean felt every pair of eyes on him as he stepped off the plane, his earlier excitement replaced by a deep sense of humiliation. But even as the plane door closed behind them, this wasn't the end of their story, it was only the beginning. The ride home from the airport was silent, except for the occasional sniffle from Sean in the back seat. His mum kept glancing at him through the rearview mirror, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said softly, though her voice carried an edge of anger. "None of this was your fault." Sean nodded weakly, staring out the window. The excitement that had once bubbled inside him felt like a distant memory. His sister, sitting beside him, finally broke the silence. "We need to say something," she said. "People need to know what happened." That night, Sean's family sat in the living room, piecing together their thoughts. His mom wrote a detailed post on social media, recounting everything from the moment they boarded the plane to the humiliating walk off it. She kept her tone respectful but firm, ending the post with a heartfelt question. "Why was my son treated like this? Why did no one step in to help?" Sean's sister added photos they'd taken at the airport, Sean's beaming face before boarding and his tear-streaked cheeks afterward. Within hours, the post began gaining traction. Comments poured in, ranging from words of support to expressions of outrage. One user commented, "This is unacceptable. Name the airline so they can be held accountable." Another wrote, "I'm so sorry this happened to your family. This kind of discrimination needs to stop." But the real turning point came the next morning. A passenger from the flight, a middle-aged woman named Teresa, reached out to Sean's mom through a direct message. "I recorded everything," she wrote. Attached was a video of the incident. The video showed Sean sitting quietly by the window, his mother calmly defending him, and the cold demeanor of Ms. Bradley as she ordered them off the plane. The footage captured every word, every tense moment, and the murmurs of disapproval from nearby passengers. Sean's mom shared the video on her social media, and it spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up the story, with headlines like, "Family kicked off plane for no reason, passenger video sparks outrage." People on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook flooded the airline's pages with demands for answers. "This can't be swept under the rug," one tweet read. Another demanded, "Airline name. Care to explain why a child was kicked off your flight for being excited? We're waiting." By midday, The airline released a brief statement, calling the situation regrettable and promising an internal investigation. But the public wasn't satisfied. The hashtag #JusticeForSean began trending, and more passengers came forward to share their own stories of unfair treatment by airline staff. But as the video continued to circulate, the pressure mounted, and silence was no longer an option for the airline or Ms. Bradley. By the next morning, the story had gone from a viral post to a national headline. News segments replayed the video of Sean and his family being forced off the plane, and commentators debated the broader implications of the incident. "How often does this happen to families who don't have someone to record it?" one panelist questioned. The airline, feeling the heat, issued a more detailed statement. This time they apologized directly to Sean and his family. "We deeply regret the experience of one of our young passengers and his family on Flight 281 to Los Angeles. This is not reflective of our values, and we are conducting a full investigation into the matter." But it wasn't enough. The public demanded action, and soon the airline announced that Ms. Bradley had been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Meanwhile, the family received overwhelming support. Sean's mum began getting messages from advocacy groups and community leaders who wanted to highlight their story as part of a larger conversation about systemic biases in customer service industries. On a Thursday morning, just 4 days after the incident, Sean's family was invited to speak on a popular morning talk show. Sitting on the couch, Sean's mum spoke passionately about the need for accountability. "We're not looking for revenge," she said. "We just want to make sure no other child feels the way my son felt that day, singled out, humiliated, and made to feel like they don't belong." Sean sat quietly beside her, his small hands gripping the armrest of the couch. When the host asked him how he felt, he paused for a moment before answering. "I was excited to go on my first plane ride," he said, his voice soft but steady. "I didn't know why she was mad at me. I didn't do anything wrong." The clip of Sean's words was shared widely, touching the hearts of millions. People were moved by his innocence and resilience, and it only intensified the calls for meaningful action. As the days passed, the airline took further steps to regain public trust. They announced mandatory bias training for all employees and pledged to overhaul their customer service policies. Ms. Bradley, after a thorough review of the incident, was terminated from her position. In a statement to the press, she claimed she never intended to cause harm and blamed her actions on a misunderstanding. Few were convinced. Sean's family received a formal apology from the airline's CEO, along with an offer for free flights and accommodations for their trip to Los Angeles. But for Sean's mum, the real victory wasn't the free flights, it was the conversations that the incident had sparked. But even as the airline made amends, the true impact of the story was only just beginning to unfold in ways no one could have anticipated. As the dust began to settle, Sean's story continued to resonate far beyond the confines of a single flight. News outlets and online communities used it as a jumping-off point for broader discussions about discrimination, implicit bias, and accountability in customer service industries. In their hometown of Austin, community members organized a rally to show solidarity with Sean and his family. People held signs with messages like, "Every child deserves respect," and "No room for discrimination." Local leaders gave speeches about the importance of addressing these issues head-on, emphasizing how systemic change starts with everyday actions. Sean, who was once too shy to speak publicly, took the microphone at the rally. Standing on a small stage, he looked out at the crowd, a mix of familiar faces and strangers. "When I got kicked off that plane," he began, his voice small but growing stronger with each word, "I thought maybe I did something wrong. But I didn't. And no one should feel like they're less important just because of who they are." The crowd erupted in applause. Sean's mum wiped a tear from her cheek as she watched her son, who had started the week as an excited little boy, grow into a voice for something much bigger than himself. Online, the conversation continued. Sean's story became a symbol of resilience and the power of standing up against injustice. The hashtag Hashtag justice for Sean was replaced with #respect every passenger, signaling a shift from anger to advocacy. People shared their own stories of discrimination, many of which had never been told before. The family also saw the impact in their everyday lives. Strangers approached Sean's mum in the grocery store to thank her for speaking out. A teacher at Sean's school shared his story with the class, sparking a discussion among students about kindness and respect. For Sean, the experience taught him a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. That even in moments of pain and humiliation, he could find strength. Sometimes, his mum told him one night as they sat on the porch, things happen to us that don't make sense. But what matters is what we do after. And you, my boy, showed the world what it means to stand tall. The airline, in its efforts to restore trust, introduced new measures aimed at preventing similar incidents. They launched a hotline for passengers to report concerns, partnered with advocacy groups, and rolled out a campaign promoting inclusivity in air travel. While some remained skeptical of their intentions, others acknowledged that Sean's story had forced meaningful change. As for Sean, he finally got his chance to fly. A few weeks after the rally, his family boarded a plane to Los Angeles. This time, the experience was everything he had hoped it would be. He pressed his face against the window as the plane ascended, watching the world shrink below him. His mum leaned over and whispered, "See, baby, I told you it'd be worth the wait." Sean smiled, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The clouds outside the window seemed just a little closer now, almost like they were within reach. And with that, Sean's journey wasn't just about a flight. It became a reminder to all of us that standing up against wrong can lead to something truly right. Sean's story teaches us that staying silent in the face of injustice only allows it to continue. Whether it's standing up for ourselves, for a friend, or even a stranger, every voice matters. The next time you see someone being treated unfairly, don't look away. Speak up, share their story, and be part of the change. Let's make kindness and respect the norm, no matter where we are.